For walking out of dinner after learning why my family treated me like an outsider for years. I'm Daisy, 29, and in my family, I was always the daughter who was expected to be grateful for leftovers while my older brother Aaron got the good plates, the loud applause, and the framed photos. That probably sounds dramatic, but the difference was visible before anyone even opened their mouth. There were 3 framed graduation pictures of Aaron in my parents' hallway, one from high school, one from college, and one from a professional program he completed later. They were all professionally printed, matched in black frames, and arranged beneath a wooden sign that said "Family is everything." My school pictures were in a cardboard box under plastic tubs of Christmas decorations. I found that out by accident when I was 26 and my mother asked me to look for an extension cord. I lifted the lid and saw my own face staring up at me from 7th grade, all crooked bangs and braces. Underneath that were my senior portrait, 2 certificates, and a photo of me holding an academic medal. When I asked why they were in storage, my mother, Marlene, didn't even look embarrassed. "Oh honey, we ran out of wall space." There was an empty wall 6 feet away. Aaron's achievements were family events. Mine were things my parents acknowledged if I reminded them. When Aaron won a school award at 17, my mother ordered a grocery store sheet cake with his name piped in thick blue icing. She invited aunts, uncles, cousins, and 2 neighbors. My father, Gordon, gave a speech about how Aaron had always been determined. People clapped while Aaron stood beside the cake, pretending to be embarrassed. The following year I received a scholarship. My mother sent me a text that said, "That's nice. Don't forget we need milk." That night, there was leftover cake in the refrigerator from one of Aaron's celebrations. I ate a corner piece over the sink because no one had thought to plan dinner. Aaron came in, opened the fridge, and saw me. "You okay?" "I got the scholarship." "Oh, right. Congratulations." He took out a soda. I remember asking, "Did Mom tell you?" "She mentioned something." I looked at the blue icing staining my fork. "She had emotions for both of us. She just spent them all on you." He sighed like I had put him in an unfair position. "You know how she gets about my stuff." That was Aaron's defense for most of our lives. He knew. He simply preferred knowing quietly. My mother called herself the woman who gave everything to her family. She said it at dinners, in birthday cards, and during arguments. Especially during arguments. If I asked why Aaron received help with something I had been told to handle alone, she would press a hand to her chest and say, "After everything we have done for you, you are still keeping score?" If I pushed, my father would rub his forehead and say, "Daisy, don't upset your mother." If I told him I was already upset, he would answer, "That's different." For a long time I kept showing up anyway. Every other Sunday, I brought my mother the lemon loaf she liked from a bakery near me. I arrived early to help set the table. I washed aluminum serving trays even when she had transferred the food into nicer dishes so everyone could admire her hosting. I picked up prescriptions, returned packages, remembered birthdays, and listened to long phone calls about how hard it was to keep the family together. Some stubborn part of me believed that if I was calm enough, helpful enough, and small enough, my parents would eventually stop acting like loving me was charity. Around 27, I began saying no. Not dramatically. I just stopped answering every demand as if it were an emergency. When my mother called at 9 on a weeknight and wanted me to drive across town to return curtains she had ordered in the wrong color, I told her I couldn't. "You used to be so sweet before you started keeping score," she said. "No," I told her. "I used to be easier to use." She went silent for 3 seconds. Then she started crying. Within 10 minutes my father called. "Couldn't you have just helped her? Couldn't she return curtains tomorrow? You know she gets overwhelmed. And you know I'm not her employee. This isn't helping anyone." That was another phrase he loved. This isn't helping anyone. It usually meant I was saying something true at an inconvenient time. Aaron became the family's unofficial peacekeeper, which mostly meant he called me and asked me to surrender. "I just want us to be normal," he said once, after Mom had accused me of abandoning the family because I skipped a Sunday dinner while sick. "Normal for you means I swallow it and you keep the crown." "I don't have a crown. You have 3 framed graduation pictures." He laughed, but not because it was funny. "I hear you," he said. Aaron always said he heard me. He just never did anything that might cost him. The dinner that changed everything was held to celebrate Aaron becoming a partner at the small firm where he worked. It was a legitimate accomplishment. I was happy for him. That was the part my family never understood. I didn't resent Aaron for succeeding. I resented being told his success proved he deserved things I didn't. My mother called me 4 days before the dinner. "You're coming, right?" "Yes. And please don't bring any tension." I was standing in the grocery store with a carton of eggs in my hand. "What does that mean?" "You know exactly what it means." "I really don't." "It means this evening is about your brother. I will not have you turning it into a referendum on your childhood." "I've never done that." "You don't have to say anything. People can feel your attitude." I almost laughed. "My attitude has a reservation now?" "Daisy." I said I'm coming. She softened immediately. "Good. Aaron deserves the whole family around him." The whole family. Her favorite phrase whenever she needed labor, silence, money, attendance, or forgiveness. I brought the lemon loaf. I hated myself a little for that. When I arrived, the house looked like it had been staged for a holiday card. Marlene had placed 2 disposable aluminum trays on the kitchen counter, but the food itself was arranged in white serving dishes with sprigs of parsley. A framed photograph of Aaron at 8 years old stood beside the cake. Another showed him holding his college diploma. There was not a single picture of me on the side table. The cake came from the same grocery store my mother had used when we were kids. "Congratulations," Aaron was written in blue icing. Aunt Helen hugged me near the doorway. "Your mother said you two have been distant." That's one way to describe being corrected every time I tell the truth. Helen pulled back and studied me. "She worries about you." "My mother worries about how I describe her." Helen gave me a small, uncomfortable smile and changed the subject. Uncle Victor was already seated in the living room, holding a glass of iced tea. He had never been especially warm toward me, but he was direct, which I preferred to fake sweetness. He nodded and asked how I was doing. I said fine. He looked as if he knew that wasn't the full answer but didn't press. Grandma Ruth sat in an armchair near the window. At 82, she moved slowly but noticed everything. Her white hair was pinned neatly at the back of her head, and her purse sat on her lap with both hands folded over it. When I hugged her, she held on a second longer than usual. "You all right?" she asked. "I haven't been here long enough to know." Her mouth tightened. Across the room, my mother floated between relatives with the kind of warm efficiency that made people call her a wonderful hostess. She touched shoulders when she spoke. She laughed softly. She asked everyone about their lives and remembered just enough details to seem deeply attentive. With me, she looked at the loaf in my hands and said, "Oh, you brought the bakery one. You like the bakery one?" "I do. I just thought you might make it yourself this time." I stared at her. Then she smiled and kissed my cheek as if nothing had happened. Dinner began politely. Aaron talked about work. Helen asked questions. Gordon told a story about Aaron taking apart a radio when he was 10, a story we had all heard at least 12 times. My mother kept touching Aaron's arm and saying, "We always knew he was going somewhere." I sat across from Ruth and concentrated on eating. Halfway through dinner, Aaron leaned toward me. "Thanks for coming." "Of course. I know things have been weird." "Weird is one word." He lowered his voice. "Please don't make tonight weird." I put my fork down. "I'm not the one who made truth weird." His jaw tightened. "I'm trying." "At what?" Before he could answer, my mother tapped a spoon against her glass. The room quieted. Gordon sat straighter. Aaron smiled with the resigned pride of someone who had expected a speech. My mother stood at the head of the table, one hand resting beside her plate. "I want to say something about my son," she began. "My son. Not one of my children. Not Aaron. My son." She talked about his work ethic, his loyalty, and the way he had never forgotten where he came from. She said he understood sacrifice. She said he appreciated the people who had given him a foundation. Then her tone shifted. It was subtle enough that anyone who didn't know her might have missed it. "Some children remember sacrifice," she said. "Some children only remember what they think they were denied." No one moved. My hands went under the table, one folded over the other. I took a slow breath. My mother continued with a soft, wounded smile. As a parent, you learn that love isn't always returned in the same spirit it's given. Sometimes you open your home and your heart, and the child you made space for grows up believing you still owed her more. Helen looked at me. Victor stopped drinking. Aaron's smile disappeared. My father looked down at the condensation on his water glass and began wiping it with his thumb. I asked, "What exactly did you open your heart to, Mom?" She blinked as though I had interrupted a prayer. "This is Aaron's night. You brought me into it. I didn't name you. You didn't have to." Gordon finally looked up. "Daisy, this is not the time." "Then when is the time for Mom to explain why she keeps talking as if I was a stranger she rescued?" My mother gave a small sad laugh. "You always remember things your way. Say it clearly if you're going to say it." "Daisy," Aaron warned. I didn't look at him. My mother's eyes traveled around the table, checking the room before she answered. Not every family would take in a child and treat her as one of their own. For a second, I genuinely couldn't process the sentence. I knew my mother had used phrases like "made space for you" and "after all we did." I knew she had implied I required more sacrifice than Aaron. But this was different. She was telling relatives I had been taken in. I turned to my father. "Is that what you let her tell people?" He picked up his glass, set it back down and said, "Enough." That wasn't an answer. My mother's voice became gentler. "You see, this is what I mean. We can't celebrate your brother without you turning the room against us. I've said 6 sentences. And every one of them has a knife in it." "No," I said. "You keep handing people the knife and then pointing at the blood." Aaron pushed his chair back slightly. "Can we stop?" I looked at him. "You heard what she said. I'm not saying it was phrased well. Phrased well. I'm saying this isn't the place." Victor spoke for the first time. "Actually, I'd like to know what Marlene meant." My mother looked at him, visibly startled. Helen said, "I thought Daisy was your biological daughter." "I am," I said. Marlene pressed her lips together. "This family has private history that Daisy enjoys dragging into public whenever she feels neglected." "What private history?" I asked. She lifted her chin. "I will not be attacked in my own home." There it was. The door she always used when facts got too close. I stood. My chair legs scraped against the floor. No one else moved. "I'm leaving." My father exhaled as though I had finally agreed to be reasonable. "Good. We'll talk when everyone is calmer." "No," I said. "You'll talk when you're ready to answer exact questions." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "You're humiliating your brother." Aaron stared at his plate. I waited 1 second for him to say she was wrong. He didn't. I walked out before dessert. The evening air felt cold against my face even though it wasn't a cold night. I made it to my car before I heard the front door open behind me. Ruth came down the walkway slowly, one hand gripping the railing. A faded dish towel was tucked beneath her arm. I went back to help her with the last step. "What are you doing out here?" "Giving you something I should have given you years ago." She pulled the towel away. Inside was an old metal recipe tin with faded red flowers on the lid. A strip of yellowed tape ran across the front. My name was written on it in Ruth's blocky handwriting. "What is this?" "Proof." My stomach tightened. "Proof of what?" "That your mother didn't start that lie tonight." I looked back at the house. Through the front window, I could see shadows moving in the dining room. Ruth pushed the tin against my hands. "Open this where your mother can't interrupt you." "Grandma, what is in here?" "You were old enough to be hurt by the lie. You're old enough to know why it started." Her hands were trembling. "Why did you wait?" She met my eyes. "Too long." That's the honest answer. I put the tin on the passenger seat and helped her back toward the house. At the door she stopped. "Make copies before you speak to anyone." That sentence scared me more than anything else she had said. I drove 3 blocks, pulled into an empty pharmacy parking lot, and sat with both hands on the steering wheel. My phone buzzed. "Aaron, you shouldn't have left like that." Then another. "Dad, give your mother time to settle down." Then my mother. After everything we did, you couldn't let your brother have one evening. I turned the phone face down. The tape on the recipe tin came away with a dry tearing sound. Inside were envelopes, photocopies, folded bank statements, and a small white box held closed with a rubber band. The first letter was written in careful blue ink on thick cream paper. It was from my great-aunt June, my grandmother's older sister. I remembered her only in fragments. Lavender hand cream, peppermints in a glass dish, a narrow face that softened whenever she spoke to me. The letter was dated a year before she died. To Gordon and Marlene. I am placing these funds in trust for Daisy, to be transferred to her when she reaches 21. This money is for Daisy when she is old enough to decide for herself. It is not to be folded into the household, used for Aaron, or redistributed in the name of fairness. Daisy should know that she was thought of specifically and loved without condition. I read the last sentence 3 times. Beneath the letter was a notarized acknowledgement page. Marlene was listed as temporary custodian. Gordon's signature was at the bottom. The fund had originally held a little over $73,000. It wasn't fantasy money. It wouldn't have bought a mansion or changed generations. But at 21, it could have paid my remaining education costs, covered the debt I took on, or given me a stable start. It mattered. There were bank statements with withdrawal dates circled in red pen. One withdrawal happened 2 weeks before Aaron bought his first car. Another came during the semester my parents announced that Aaron had a tuition shortfall and the family had pulled together to help him. A much larger withdrawal came the month before the deposit on Aaron's wedding venue was due. I knew those dates because my mother had turned every one of those moments into a story about sacrifice. She used to say, "We went without so Aaron could stay in school." She told relatives, "We emptied our savings to make sure his wedding was respectable." Apparently, at least some of what they emptied had belonged to me. I opened the small white box. It was empty. Underneath it was another note in Aunt June's handwriting. "The pearl ring is also for Daisy. It was given to me by my mother, and Daisy is the child I wish to have it. Please do not substitute another item. She will understand one day why being chosen matters." My breathing changed. I set the note down and reached for the final envelope. It contained several printed emails and a handwritten letter from Ruth. "Daisy, you were never taken in. You were born to Marlene and Gordon, and no one rescued you from anything. When you were a baby, your mother went through a difficult period after your birth. You stayed with me for several months while she recovered and Gordon worked. It was family helping family. You returned home before your first birthday. Years later, when you began noticing the difference in how you and Aaron were treated, Marlene started describing that time as though she had been asked to take you back after not wanting you. That was false. June noticed the difference too. She set aside money for you because she worried you would reach adulthood with less support. Marlene resented the decision. Gordon said keeping peace in the household mattered more than arguing over June's wishes. I kept copies because I didn't trust the originals to remain available. I confronted your parents twice. The first time they said the money was being managed properly. The second time Marlene told me you were too sensitive to know, and that the money had been used for the family. I should have told you when you turned 21. I let fear of losing contact with you and the rest of the family make me a coward. That is mine to answer for. Your mother needed you quiet. That is not the same as needing peace. Ruth. The printed emails were between my parents. One from Marlene said, "Daisy will only make this ugly if she knows. She has always been jealous of Aaron." My father had replied, "Then don't tell her until we figure out what can be replaced." Another email dated 18 months later read, "She keeps asking why June left nothing for her. Tell Ruth to stop hinting." My father's reply was only 4 words. "I will handle mother." I sat in that parking lot until the lights over the pharmacy clicked off, 1 row at a time. I didn't cry immediately. At first I felt almost detached, as though I had opened a box belonging to someone else. Then I thought about being 21 and taking extra shifts because my father said there was no money to help me. I thought about Marlene telling me I lacked Aaron's ability to inspire people to invest in him. I thought about the interest I had paid, the apartments I hadn't applied for, the medical appointment I delayed because I didn't want another bill. Then I thought about the empty ring box. That was when I cried. Not loudly. I pressed the heels of my hands against my eyes and bent forward until my forehead touched the steering wheel. The money was one kind of betrayal. The ring was another. Aunt June had wanted me to have something that said, "I choose you," and my mother had hidden even that. My phone buzzed again. A voicemail from Marlene. I listened because I suddenly understood that every word might matter. "Daisy, I hope you're proud of yourself. Your grandmother is upset, your brother's evening is ruined, and everyone is asking questions. Don't start calling Ruth and confusing her further. She loves drama, and at her age she forgets things. We will discuss your behavior when you are ready to apologize." I saved the voicemail. Then I drove home. For the next 48 hours I didn't confront anyone. That surprised even me. An earlier version of myself would have driven back to the house, slammed the papers on the table, and demanded an explanation. Marlene would have cried. Gordon would have said I was attacking her. Aaron would have urged everyone to calm down. By morning, the story would have become Daisy lost control again. I was done giving them usable versions of me. I scanned every page in the tin. I made 2 sets of copies. I placed the original papers in a small fireproof lockbox and stored it away from my apartment. Then I called the estate office listed on one of the documents. The name had changed, and the woman who answered had to search archived records. She asked me to send proof of identity and a copy of the acknowledgement page. I did. 2 days later she called back. "Yes," she said. "There was a custodial account under your name." I sat at my kitchen table with a notebook open. "Can you tell me who had authority over it?" "Your mother was custodian. Your father was listed as an acknowledging parent and secondary contact. When was I supposed to receive access?" "At 21. I was never informed." There was a pause. "I can't give legal advice," she said carefully, "but I can provide the records we retain and the transfer history available to us." "Was the account transferred to me?" "No." The answer was simple. It cut through years of fog. Over the next 2 weeks I built a timeline. I wrote down the date the estate closed, the date my parents signed the acknowledgement, my 21st birthday, the dates of each withdrawal I could identify, Aaron's car purchase, his tuition shortfall, his wedding deposit, the month my mother told me Aunt June had not really left anything. I added screenshots of old messages and printed emails from the tin. I saved the voicemail in 2 locations. Ruth came to see me one afternoon. She sat at my kitchen table while I placed the documents between us. "Did you know all of it?" I asked. "No." Her answer came quickly. "How much did you know?" "I knew June left the fund. I knew Marlene objected. I knew they had used some money before you turned 21. Did you know they used it for Aaron?" "I suspected. I saw dates. I heard your mother talk about bills being covered. I didn't have every statement until later." "Why did you keep giving her chances?" Ruth looked down at her hands. "Because she's my daughter." "So am I supposed to understand that?" "No." I had expected her to defend herself. The absence of it made my anger harder to hold cleanly. She continued. "I told myself I was staying close so I could protect you. But protection that arrives after the harm is not much protection." "That's true." "I know. You let me think I was crazy." "I did." The words sat between us. I wanted to forgive her because she had finally told me. I wanted to punish her because she had waited. Both feelings were real. "Where is the ring?" I asked. Ruth's mouth tightened. "I believe Marlene has it." "You believe?" "I saw it once in her jewelry case after June died. When I asked, she said she was keeping it safe for you." "She kept it safe for 8 years?" "She kept it hidden." I stood and walked to the counter because sitting still felt impossible. Ruth didn't ask me to make her feel better. After a minute, she said, "You don't owe me quick forgiveness." That was more accountability than I had ever received from my parents. My mother kept calling. First she wanted an apology. Then she wanted to clear up confusion. Then she wanted me to stop speaking to Ruth. One voicemail said, "Your grandmother isn't as sharp as she appears. Please don't encourage these stories." Ruth, meanwhile, could identify the date and purpose of nearly every piece of paper in the tin without looking at the labels. Aaron called me 6 times before I answered. "I want to understand what's going on," he said. "No. You want to know what I know. That's unfair. Is it inaccurate?" He exhaled. "Grandma told Mom she gave you some old paperwork. Did Mom tell you what was in it?" "She said Aunt June may have left you something and there was confusion about how it was managed." "Confusion?" "I'm not defending the wording. You never defend the wording. You just defend the outcome." "I hear you." "Stop saying that. What do you want me to say? Did you know there was money in my name?" "No." The answer came slightly too fast. "Did you know Grandma believed Mom and Dad had kept something from me?" He hesitated. "I knew there had been arguments." "What kind of arguments?" "I don't know. Money. Aunt June. You. Did you ever ask?" I was trying not to get in the middle. "You've lived in the middle your whole life. You just call it the top. That is exactly why people are afraid to talk to you. You turn everything into an attack." "Did you ask where the money for your car came from?" "I was 19. "What about your wedding deposit?" "I was told that Mom and Dad had savings." "Did it occur to you that they never had savings when I needed help?" He became quiet. I could hear a television in the background. Finally, he said, "What are you planning to do?" "I'm finding out where my money went. Blowing up the family won't get it back." "I'm not blowing anything up. I'm checking the foundation." "Daisy, I have to go. Please don't do something you can't take back." I almost laughed. They had taken $73,000 in an heirloom, built a lie around me, and warned me about doing something irreversible. I hung up. 3 days later, Marlene made a public post. She didn't name me. She didn't need to. The post began with a photograph of a candle and a quote about motherhood. Under it, she wrote about the unique grief of loving an adult child who rewrites her upbringing. She said some parents gave everything and were still punished by children who focused on what they hadn't received. She wrote that family should not become a courtroom where every sacrifice is entered as evidence. Relatives commented beneath it, "You did your best." Some people only understand when they become parents. Praying for healing. Helen called me that evening. "Your mom is hurting. She made a public post about me. She didn't use your name. She told everyone at dinner that I was taken in. Do you think they're confused about who she means?" Helen sighed. "I'm not saying she handled it well. What are you saying?" "That maybe there are things you don't know about what your parents went through." I looked at the timeline on my table. "You're right," I said. "There were things I didn't know." My tone must have registered because Helen went quiet. "What does that mean?" "It means Mom should stop recruiting an audience. Daisy, if you have something to say, I'll say it where she can answer." My mother scheduled a smaller family dinner the following Sunday. She told people it was meant to restore peace. Aaron texted me that she expected an apology. I replied, "I'll be there." He sent back, "Thank you. Please come with an open heart." I wrote, "I'm bringing records." He called immediately. I didn't answer. Before the dinner, I spoke with an attorney. It wasn't a dramatic meeting. There was no promise of a courtroom victory or a huge payout. The records were old. Some withdrawals might be difficult to classify. Time limits and custodial rules were complicated. The attorney told me what could be requested, what should be preserved, and why I should stop discussing the matter verbally when possible. She drafted a short letter demanding a complete accounting of the fund, preservation of related documents, and written communication regarding the money. The letter was only 2 pages. It felt heavier than the recipe tin. I arrived at my parents' house carrying a plain envelope and a canvas tote. My mother opened the door wearing a cream sweater and the expression of someone preparing to forgive me publicly. "I'm glad you came," she said. I said I would. She leaned forward as if to hug me. I stepped past her. In the dining room, Gordon was already seated. He looked tired. Aaron stood near the kitchen doorway holding a drink. Helen and Victor sat at opposite ends of the table. Ruth was beside Victor. No one had put out a cake this time. My mother took her seat and folded her hands. I asked everyone here because I don't want misunderstandings to harden into permanent damage. I set my tote beside my chair. Aaron said quietly, "Please don't make tonight weird." I'm not the one who made truth weird. His face tightened. You already used that line. It still applies. Marlene looked around the table. This is what I've been dealing with. Hostility before I've even spoken. You posted about me publicly, I said. I shared my feelings. You told relatives I was a child you took in. I said we made space for you during a difficult time. No. You said not every family would take in a child and treat her as one of their own. You always remember things in the cruelest possible way. Victor spoke. That is what you said, Marlene. She turned to him. You're taking her side without understanding the context. I'm asking for the context. My mother's eyes shone. The context is that I went through a terrible period after Daisy was born. My own mother had to help, and when Daisy came back, I poured everything I had into being her mother. Ruth said, she was always your daughter. I know that. Then why did you tell people she was taken in? I was speaking emotionally. I opened my tote. My father immediately said, Daisy, don't. Don't what? Turn this into a spectacle. I placed a stack of copies on the table. You spent years telling everyone I should be grateful for a place at this table. I'm giving them the part you left out. My mother stared at the papers. What is that? You know. Her face changed. It wasn't much. Just a slight loss of color and a tiny movement in her jaw. But Ruth saw it. Victor saw it. So did I. I passed a copy of Aunt June's letter to Helen and another to Victor. I placed the notarized acknowledgement in front of Gordon. He didn't touch it. I laid out the timeline. Each withdrawal date appeared beside the event it matched. Aaron's car. Aaron's tuition. Aaron's wedding deposit. Then I placed the printed email on top. Daisy will only make this ugly if she knows. The room stayed quiet long enough for the refrigerator motor to click on in the kitchen. My mother recovered first. This is exactly what I feared. Old documents ripped out of context, used to humiliate your family. I'm not asking whether you feel humiliated, I said. I'm asking where the money went. It went toward family needs. It wasn't left to the family. You were a child. I was 21 when I was supposed to receive it. You weren't ready. Who decided that? Your father and I. The letter didn't give you that choice. She put a hand over her heart. I'm sorry that my sacrifices were never enough for you. I looked at Helen. This is what she does when I ask for a fact. Helen lowered her eyes to the letter. I turned back to my mother. Did you use money from the custodial account to pay for Aaron's car? I don't remember every household transaction from 10 years ago. The withdrawal was $18,000. We were managing many expenses. That wasn't an answer. I will not be interrogated in my own home. You wanted the same audience that judged me. Here they are. Aaron rubbed his forehead. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying blowing this up won't fix it. I looked at him. The money was in my name. I didn't know that. You knew Grandma and Mom fought about something Aunt June left me. I was a kid when some of this happened. You were 29 when you accepted help with your wedding. I was told it came from our parents. And because the answer benefited you, you never asked another question. That's not fair. No. Fair would have been me receiving what was left to me. He leaned back. I didn't ask for any of this. No. You just accepted it every time it was handed to you. My father finally picked up the notarized page. His thumb moved over his own signature. Victor watched him. Gordon, did you sign that? My father didn't answer. Victor leaned forward. Stop looking at the table. Did you sign it? Yes. Helen inhaled sharply. My mother turned toward him. Gordon, Victor asked, did you know Daisy was supposed to receive the money at 21? My father wiped condensation from his glass even though the glass was almost dry. Yes. Did you know she was never told? He looked at my mother. Victor said, That's not what I asked. My father closed his eyes briefly. Yes. Something inside me went still. I had seen the signature. I had read his emails. I already knew. Hearing him say it was different. My mother began to cry. Not loudly. She pressed her fingers beneath her eyes and shook her head. Your father trusted me to handle the household. We were under enormous pressure. Aaron needed help. Daisy was doing well. She was independent. I stared at her. You decided I was independent because it made taking from me easier. You always had such pride. We knew you would find a way. So you rewarded the child who expected help and stole from the one who didn't? Don't use that word. What word would you prefer? We borrowed. When were you planning to repay it? She looked at Gordon. He said nothing. I continued. When were you planning to tell me? No answer. When were you planning to give me the ring? My mother's eyes snapped back to me. That was the first question that truly frightened her. Helen looked up. What ring? I placed a copy of Aunt June's note on the table. The pearl ring she left for me. My mother shook her head. That old thing wasn't safe to give a young woman. I'm 29. I was protecting it. Where is it? She didn't answer. Is it in your jewelry case? Her mouth opened. Ruth said. It was. Everyone turned to her. Marlene's voice sharpened. Mother, please. Ruth didn't raise hers. The truth didn't ruin this family. The lie did. My mother looked as if she had been slapped. I cared for you, she told me. I fed you, clothed you, kept a roof over your head. Some mothers would have given up. I didn't. I felt the old reflex rise in me, the urge to explain that I had been a good daughter, that I had tried, that I had loved her. I let the urge pass. You were my mother, I said. Food and shelter were not a favor you purchased with my inheritance. You have always had a talent for making people feel guilty for loving your brother. This is not about loving Aaron. You can't stand that he was easier to love. The room changed. Even my father looked at her. Aaron said, Mom. She realized too late what she had said. I didn't mean. Yes, you did, I said. My voice stayed calm, which seemed to disturb her more than shouting would have. You spent years telling me I was difficult, cold, jealous, and lucky to belong. You made relatives think I had been rescued. Meanwhile, you signed for money left specifically to me, used it for the child you called easier to love, and hid the letter proving I had been chosen. Her face crumpled. You're humiliating your mother. No. You taught everyone to humiliate me with a lie. I'm correcting the record. Victor turned to Gordon. Why did you let this happen? My father's shoulders dropped. I thought keeping the peace mattered more at the time. Ruth answered before I could. Not for her. Gordon stared at the table. I thought it was better for the family. I felt my fingernails press into my palm. The family included me. I know. No. You knew on paper. You didn't act like it. Helen had tears in her eyes, but I wasn't ready to comfort her. She looked at my mother. Marlene, you told me Daisy pulled away because she resented Aaron. She does resent him. I resent what all of you protected, I said. That is different. Helen picked up the email where Marlene had written that I would make things ugly if I knew. You knew she didn't know, Helen said. My mother's crying stopped. Of course I knew. We were trying to decide the least damaging way to explain it. For 8 years? Victor asked. We had every intention of making it right. How? I asked. Silence. I reached into my tote and removed the attorney's letter. This is a written request for a full accounting of the fund and preservation of all related records. From now on, conversations about the money happen in writing. My father looked at the letter as though it might bite him. Do we really need lawyers? We needed honesty. You chose not to provide it. This can stay inside the family. It was inside the family while you controlled the story. Now it's documented. My mother straightened. Are you threatening us? No. I'm describing what happens next. I placed a second page beside the first. You will stop telling people I was taken in. You will stop implying I invented my childhood. If you involve more relatives, I will send them the timeline and copies of the relevant documents. I am done defending myself against a story you built to hide what you took. Aaron said. That sounds like a threat. It's a boundary with evidence. You can't expect everyone to understand decades of family history from a few papers. The papers are clearer than any of you have been. He lowered his voice into the calm tone he used when he wanted to sound like the only adult in the room. I hear that you're hurt. I'm not asking you to hear that I'm hurt. I'm asking you to acknowledge that some of what you received came from money that belonged to me. I don't know that for certain. I slid the timeline toward him. The car withdrawal happened 4 days before Dad wrote the check to the dealership. The tuition withdrawal matches the amount the school said you owed. The wedding withdrawal matches the venue deposit down to the dollar. He stared at the page. I wasn't controlling the accounts. No. You were controlling whether you asked questions. What do you want from me? For once, don't ask what performance will end the discomfort. Tell the truth. He swallowed. Then he looked at our father. Did my wedding money come from her account? Gordon looked at Marlene. I said, answer him. My mother whispered, some of it. Aaron's face went blank. How much? This isn't productive, Gordon said. Victor gave a short, humorless laugh. It's the first productive conversation this family has had all night. Aaron pushed the papers away. I didn't know. I believe you didn't know the amount, I said. I don't believe you knew nothing was wrong. He opened his mouth, then closed it. For once, I hear you didn't come out. I left shortly after that. No one tried to stop me except Gordon, who followed me to the entryway. Daisy. I turned. He looked older than he had at the beginning of the night. Can we please find a way to move past this? We can move through the truth. We are not moving around it. Your mother made mistakes, but she loved you. You signed the papers. His eyes dropped. I know. You don't get to hide behind her because she was louder. I was trying to keep the family together. You kept the lie together. He flinched. I opened the door. Respond to the letter. The fallout was quieter than television drama, and much messier than a clean victory. No one threw a glass. No one screamed in the street. There were no police, dramatic confessions, or sudden public apologies. Instead, relatives began calling each other in low voices. Helen called me 2 days later. I should have asked you directly, she said. Yes, you should have. I thought you had pulled away because you were angry. I pulled away because every room came with a price. She was quiet. I'm sorry. I believed she meant it. That didn't erase the years she had accepted my mother's version because it was easier. I appreciate you saying that. I don't expect you to make me feel better. Good. She gave a small sad laugh. Victor asked me to send him copies of the documents I was comfortable sharing. He helped me make a list of records my parents still needed to produce. He didn't suddenly become affectionate, but he became useful, which in that moment mattered more. Some relatives stayed silent. One cousin told Aaron privately that old money shouldn't destroy a family. Aaron repeated that to me during our next phone call. Interesting, I said. Did he offer to replace it? That's not the point. It becomes the point when people want forgiveness with someone else's money. Aaron and I spoke 3 times after the confrontation. The first call was defensive. The second was quieter. During the third, he said, I keep thinking about the wedding. I waited. I remember asking Dad if they could afford the deposit. He said not to worry about it. And you didn't. No. That was the family rule. You were told not to worry. I was told to be grateful. I know. It was the first time he said I know instead of I hear you. He continued. I should have asked more questions. Yes. I don't know what you expect me to do now. That is something you need to figure out without assigning me the work. He didn't like that answer, but he didn't argue. My parents' response to the attorney's letter came 11 days later. They admitted the fund existed. They admitted Marlene had controlled it. They provided partial records showing that a large portion had been withdrawn before my 21st birthday. and the remainder had been moved into an account that was later closed. Their explanation described the withdrawals as family expenses made during periods of financial strain. The records made clear that Aaron's car, tuition, and wedding deposit were among those expenses. There were also smaller withdrawals I couldn't tie to anything. My attorney requested more documentation. I didn't receive every answer immediately, and I didn't get some movie scene check for the full amount the next morning. Real accountability moved in boring increments. Certified mail, bank archives, written questions, delayed responses, and revised statements. But it moved. My parents eventually agreed, through counsel, to a repayment arrangement covering the traceable amount plus part of the lost growth. It was less than the amount would have become if left untouched, but it was substantial enough that they had to sell an investment property they had planned to keep for retirement. Marlene told Helen that I was taking away their security. Helen answered, "It was Daisy's security first." That sentence reached me through Victor. I didn't ask for details. The pearl ring appeared in a padded envelope sent by certified mail. There was no note from my mother. I took the package to Ruth's house before opening it. She sat beside me at her kitchen table while I cut through the tape. The ring was small. A single pearl sat in an old gold setting, slightly worn at the edges. It wasn't especially valuable in monetary terms. That was almost a relief. Ruth touched the ring with one finger. June wore that every Sunday. Did Mom ever wear it? Once that I saw. I looked at her. Ruth didn't soften the answer. Yes. I slid the ring onto my finger. It was a little loose. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then I asked, "Do you want me to forgive you?" Ruth looked out the window. "I want to be forgivable." "That's not the same thing." "No. I'm still angry." "You should be." "I don't know what our relationship looks like after this." "Then we won't pretend to know." That was enough for the moment. My mother made one final vague social media post about betrayal. She wrote that some wounds come from strangers, but the deepest come from children who use private pain as a weapon. This time the comments were different. There were only 4. One was from a church acquaintance who wrote, "Thinking of you." One was from a cousin who posted a heart. Helen didn't comment. Victor didn't comment. Aaron didn't comment. By the next morning, Marlene had deleted the post. My father emailed me asking whether we could begin rebuilding trust as a family. I replied with 3 sentences. Trust will depend on complete records, accurate public statements, and consistent behavior. I will not discuss reconciliation while either of you continues describing accountability as betrayal. Please keep communication in writing for now. He answered, "Understood." Marlene sent a separate message later that day. "I hope one day you understand that mothers are human." I typed several responses. I deleted all of them. Finally, I wrote, "Being human explains mistakes. It does not erase choices repeated for years." She didn't answer. I stopped attending Sunday dinners. At first, my mother told people I was punishing everyone. Then Victor asked her, in front of 2 relatives, whether she had produced the missing account statements. After that, she became more careful. I stopped bringing lemon loaf. I stopped returning packages, managing birthday reminders, smoothing over tension, and helping my father interpret whatever mood my mother was in. I didn't make an announcement. I simply removed the labor they had mistaken for proof that their treatment of me had no consequences. The first Sunday I stayed home, I kept reaching for my phone. At noon, I thought about the aluminum trays stacked beside the sink. At 1, I imagined my mother telling someone she didn't understand how I could be so cold. 2, Aaron texted, "Mom is having a hard day." I looked at the message for a long time. Then I replied she should speak to Dad. He didn't answer. I made tea and sat at my kitchen table with the pearl ring beside my cup. For years, I believed the central fact of my family was that Aaron had been easier to love. The documents showed me something uglier but also more freeing. They needed me to believe I was lucky to belong because a grateful daughter doesn't ask for an accounting. A grateful daughter doesn't question why her brother's life keeps getting funded, while hers is treated like an inconvenience. A grateful daughter accepts that any scrap of affection is generous. The lie had not begun because I was an outsider. They made me feel like an outsider because it made me easier to use. That realization didn't heal everything. I still had moments when my mother's voice appeared in my head before my own. I still felt guilty when I ignored a family call. I still looked at Aaron's framed photographs and remembered how badly I once wanted my face on the wall. But wanting a mother and trusting Marlene were no longer the same thing. Wanting a father and excusing Gordon were no longer the same thing. Loving Aaron and protecting him from the truth were no longer the same thing. Months later, Helen invited me to lunch. She apologized again, more specifically this time. "I believed your mother because she sounded hurt," she said. "You sounded angry, and I treated anger like proof that you were wrong. That's how Mom built the story. I know that now." I traced the rim of my glass. She counted on people caring more about her tears than my facts. Helen nodded. "I'm sorry I was one of them." I accepted the apology without pretending it repaired everything. Victor continued checking in about the records. Ruth and I saw each other cautiously and honestly. Sometimes we talked about the inheritance. Sometimes we did not. She never asked me to comfort her for waiting too long. Aaron's relationship with our parents changed after he learned the full amount. He didn't cut them off. I didn't expect him to. But he stopped serving as Marlene's messenger. When she complained that I was destroying the family, he told her to stop saying that around him. He called me afterward. "I told her the money was yours," he said. "That shouldn't have taken this long." No. It was not redemption. It was a beginning. My parents completed the first repayment transfer 6 months after the dinner. The description on the bank statement read settlement payment. I stared at those 2 words. For most of my life, my mother had described everything she gave me as sacrifice and everything I needed as debt. Now for once the record named who owed whom. I didn't celebrate by buying something extravagant. I paid off the last of the debt I had carried from my 20s. I placed the rest in an account only I controlled. Then I went to a jeweler and had the pearl ring resized. When I picked it up, the jeweler placed it in a small velvet box. I almost left it there, protected and untouched, because that was how my family treated meaningful things. Hidden, controlled, and saved for some imaginary correct moment. Instead, I put it on. That evening my father called. I let it go to voicemail. "Daisy," he said, "I know we can't undo what happened. I hope someday we can move past it." I listened twice. Then I deleted it. We couldn't move past what happened by pretending it was behind us. We could only move through the truth, and my parents were still learning that truth wasn't the part where they admitted just enough to make me return to dinner. It was the part where they lived with changed relationships, reduced trust, financial consequences, and a daughter who no longer accepted guilt as proof of love. I didn't get the childhood back. I didn't get Aunt June back. I didn't get the years when $73,000 could have made my life easier. But I got the record corrected. I got the ring. I got boundaries that no longer disappeared when my mother cried. Most importantly, I stopped asking the people who benefited from my silence to decide whether I was allowed to speak. That night at the family dinner, Marlene tried to remind me that my seat at the table had always been a gift. She was wrong. The table had been built in part with what they took from me. So I stopped begging for a seat and built one of my own. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.